second here. Just
Okay, we're
one.
streaming live now.
Pardon me?
We're streaming live now.
Oh, well, who gave that? Who gave that okay? Alrighty, here we go. I am wanting to welcome everybody to our Coastal Advisory Committee for the month of March. It's March 11th. And let us start by calling this meeting to order. Jermaine, would you like to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Sure.
Thank you.
All right. Everyone look at Cynthia's flag. Ready? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Jermaine.
You're welcome.
Cynthia, would you do a roll call, please?
Yes. Chris Kuczynski,
Here.
Gary McCacken,
Is that
absent. Charlie Smith, absent. Joe Zidron,
Yes, here.
Vice Chair Doreen Campopiano,
Here.
and Chair Susan Ambrose.
here? So we have 3 people out of 6. Is that a quorum?
We have 4 of 6. Chris Kuczynski, Joe, Doreen, and Susan. So we have a quorum.
Oh, good. Oh, I didn't see Chris come in either. Welcome, Chris.
Thank you, Susan. I'm on the phone, actually.
Okay.
No video tonight.
That's okay. As long as we see your green little ring there, we were happy.
All
Alrighty.
right.
We are going to just do some juggling in our agenda tonight to accommodate our speakers. And we're doing this for business expediency as well. So if, with the approval of my colleagues on CAC, I'd like to switch and move new business. Actually, I'd like to move the approval of minutes underneath new business. So is that okay with all of you?
Yeah, that's fine.
Yes.
Joe?
Yes.
Okay. Does anybody have a problem with that? Because I can't see, Chris, I can't see your hand moving one way or the other. Do you have a problem if I switch approval of
No,
minutes?
no.
We're fine.
Perfect.
Okay, great. So we are good to go with public input. Cynthia, do we have any public input this evening, please?
Yes, we have 1 public input, and I can read that now. Are
We
you
don't
ready?
have 2? I thought we had 2.
No, there may have been a council member that may have been wanting to log in, but I don't see him on here. So
Okay,
I'll read the public comment.
thank
And
you.
this comes from Stephanie Aguilar.
Okay,
I would like to bring up some questions about the netting under the pier, the bird traps, and bird deaths. My eight-year-old daughter and I frequent the pier area and watched many months ago the nets were installed beneath the pier. We watched over the following weeks and months as the pigeons entered the netting and could not find their way out. We contacted the lifeguards, the city main number, Beaches Parks and Recreation Department, all many times. We were forwarded to various departments and continually reported the trapped and starving birds. Eventually, we were given the contact information to Cynthia Mallett, who we have been told is the person in charge of the netting under the pier. She has been very informative and helpful. We have reported to Cynthia via phone and email multiple times about the many dead and trapped birds. She in turn has contacted the contractor who installed the nets and had the nets checked more often and emptied of dead birds. The birds are getting trapped and very scared, frantic, and stressed, and eventually dying from suffering, starvation, and dehydration stuck within the nets. 1. What are the specific alternatives to netting beneath the pier that would be more humane to the birds? 2. It is my understanding that there are various traps located on the rooftops in several locations in San Clemente. How often are these traps being emptied, and how many birds on a weekly basis are being removed alive versus deceased? 3. I was informed that the trapped birds are relocated far away. Can you specify the exact location / miles away of where the birds are released and how often? 4, how often is the netting beneath the pier emptied of birds? 5, how many birds are removed from the netting alive versus dead? Do we have exact numbers on this? 6, is this how San Clemente wants to represent their most popular tourist destination, having dead bodies of birds within the net above people's heads, where people eat and children play, where surrounding businesses pay a premium to be in this prime location? 7, I was told that the nets are being vandalized, but I wonder, do you think possibly the vandals are actually just concerned citizens trying to help release the frantic and starving birds? 8, should a phone number be posted clearly on a sign under the pier where people can call in to report trapped birds, because it took me almost a year or regularly attempting to notify someone of the problem to get in contact with the correct person. This may help vandals to know help is on the way and not be the need to cut the nets. 9, I spoke with a California park ranger who said there are several alternatives to netting which may be more humane and effective to prevent birds from roosting beneath the pier. Has anyone from the city been in contact with any other organizations who may be able to provide guidance in discovering these more effective and humane options? I would really like to tell my 8-year-old daughter that this issue has finally been resolved and we can stop counting dead bodies of birds when we go to the pier and finally have the pier be the relaxing recreation area we know it can be. Thank you for your attention to this matter, and thank you for helping to stop the needless suffering of these birds. Stephanie.
Wow. Does anybody have a comment about this letter?
Well, I could just comment that, I mean, one, this is the first I've heard that birds are actually getting trapped underneath the pier and the netting. And to me, that's concerning. I think that we should be able to find a way, hopefully, that we could modify the nets or making sure that the birds aren't getting trapped, because that's not the point. Was just to keep them out, not have them get in. And so that's my first question is how are they getting in the net and how often is that happening? But yeah, I think that's concerning what I heard. I could see why she'd be concerned.
I agree. And I must say that I've had a couple people approach me that I knew on the beach trail and mentioned this to me as well. A couple of weeks ago, it was after our last meeting. I think they said they saw some birds that were actually in a cage or some kind of trap or something, and were caught. And then within a day or two, they were gone. So I figured that Cynthia had contracted. She had mentioned to me before that when she removed birds, a company came in and took the birds out and released them. I did not know at the time that birds had been dying in there. I think this is an item that we should agendize for our April meeting. I think, Cynthia, if you could look further into it and give us a full report of exactly what happens and what are the steps, etc., and how we can communicate to the community. I'm also wondering if diners out there at the restaurant and even on the pier are seeing this kind of activity and wondering if they're talking to the owner and manager of the pier restaurant down there, Fisherman's. It'd be interesting to know. Do I have a second? I need two votes to have something added to the agenda.
I'll second that. This is Chris Kaczynski.
Thank you, Chris.
All right. Yeah, and I would say, do you need to take a vote, or can we also comment on the public comment?
Oh yeah, sure. You can come. I think we can't discuss it, but you can, if you need information, if you have something that you want to bring up that should be discussed, you can make a comment, Joe.
Yeah, I just want to take the opportunity, like other members had, to kind of reflect on the public comment. So Cynthia, I appreciate you reading the comment. Thank you very much for the seriousness that you brought the comment. So my response would be, netting as a bird deterrent mechanism is not a new thing, and it's not a controversial thing, right? The question in my mind in hearing this comment, which is very well intentioned, and I certainly understand the the traumatic situation with this commenter and her daughter, and it sounds awful, would be, we need to confirm that the net was installed for the contract. We need to look at what the maintenance responsibilities are in the contract and whether they're beholden to those maintenance responsibilities. I look at what Caltrans has done in town for the underpasses of the bridge. For instance, I look at the 5 overpass above El Camino Real. That is bird netted as well. It's a very similar type of structure, very similar type of span that's bird netted. And in my opinion, I've never seen a dying bird up in that situation. So that's what I think we need to get to the bottom of, is to ensure that the netting was installed properly per the scope of work, and if there was maintenance, to better understand that. Also, I think when we agendize this item and bring it back, what is the responsibility of the contractor for relocating the birds? I think that should be a pretty easy answer. But to the commenter's concern about potential intentional vandalism, my concern is that by doing that, while very well intentioned, it creates a situation that perpetuates the cycle of birds getting trapped. So I think we need to seriously look at that and, hopefully find a solution and prevent future, whether it be intentional or unintentional vandalism, so that we can address the issue once and for all. So I do support agendizing the item. It's kind of a bummer it took her this long to get to the folks or the project type or whoever that she needed to contact, but hopefully we'll find a resolution. So
I think those are very salient points, Joe. Thank you very much for offering them. Anybody else have a comment? Well,
Susan?
I'm sorry.
Susan, sort of last thing is maybe Cynthia could look up, because that was my question too, is that if, we installed bird deterrent netting, it seems like it would have been designed so that birds would not be trapped in that. And so I want to know if other cities have experienced this problem as well, or if there's something specific about our bird netting that is making it so these birds are getting trapped behind the net.
Well, yes, I think so too. And I think if Stephanie Aguilar is concerned about this, she's certainly, and the people who talk to me, there's certainly probably many, many more people who have seen this and just haven't made the connection to the right committee or the right people right now. And since we have this in front of us, let's take this step. And I think all of the points that have been brought up are things that should be investigated. Cynthia, can you take this on, please? And would you be able to do it for our April agenda?
Oh, definitely. I already have answers to all of the questions, so I'll put all of that into a memo.
Okay. Well,
Thank you.
Even Jorene's and checking with other cities and the netting that Joe referred to over the freeway? Maybe you could add that in your discovery as well. Okay, great. So we will be putting that on the agenda for April. Do I need a whole vote on that, Cynthia? We already have 3.
I don't think you need an official vote to add something to the agenda, just that there's at least 2 members that want the item on the agenda.
Alrighty. Thank you very much.
Welcome.
And the other person that you suspected might want to add something has not notified you as yet?
No, let me just double check my email to make sure. And no, I do not have, hold on. I do not have any other public comment.
Okay, great. Then we are moving on to new business. I am delighted to have Jason Lee and Marissa Espino here from OCTA to give us this presentation on the final report for the rail infrastructure study from, I think it was finally finished in January. Jason comes to us with at least 8 years experience at OCTA alone, and he handles rail capital projects for rail and also safety and service operations for rail for OCTA. And that's a formidable job. And speaking of formidable jobs, we have Marissa, who is an expert and a specialist in community relations. And she's one of the principals at OCTA, and she has been there for, I think it's 18 years. Is that correct, Marissa?
I'm at 15, close.
Oh, 15. Thank you very much. And that's a good stint of time at OCTA. So I'm sure that she's covered various projects in all of the kinds of transportation infrastructure. Well, some of you hadn't joined us yet. I had asked her to send to Cynthia, so Cynthia can disperse the actual study that she did with the community members and her other committees regarding the rail study. And it's got graphs, et cetera, in that, with percentages of people and kinds of people and what their thoughts, et cetera, were. So she's agreed to do so, and she will forward that to Cynthia. Did you say you could do that by tomorrow, Marissa, or should we look for that next week?
I can send it tomorrow morning.
Oh, wonderful. And Cynthia has agreed that she'll get that out to us as well tomorrow. So you can have some fun weekend reading if you like. So thank you for that. And with that introduction, I'm going to have, I'm not sure who is starting, but I'm going to introduce Jason Lee and Marissa Espino to join us tonight with our presentation, the OC Rail Infrastructure Defense. Oh, you moved that too quickly. Could you go back, please? Oh, did I lose you? What happened here? I don't know.
I think we're still here, Susan. I can see
Okay,
the,
well, I'm seeing my join a meeting box. So I don't, if you can hear me, that's fine, I guess. Let's see. Well,
We can hear you. Do you have your,
I do. It's
the
the,
images on the right? Are you okay? Can you see the PowerPoint? Or
no,
if you-
I can't see the PowerPoint. It just died. OCTA Rail Defense Against Climate Change Plan. Let me, I just don't even know what to do here.
and we can see and hear you, Susan, just FYI.
Okay, well, is Kate still here? Oh, here we go. What happened? I wonder. Well, okay, I do see the introductory slide. Thank you very much. So you
Well,
may begin.
okay, well, thank you, Susan. Thanks for that warm introduction. And good evening, members of the committee. And once again, I'm Jason Lee with OCTA Capital Programs. Now with me, Marissa Espino with Public Outreach will co-present the OC Rail Infrastructure Defense Against Climate Change Plan. And you can see the project map on the right-hand side. This project study area is primarily from Irvine, near Jeffrey Road, to the Orange San Diego County line. Is roughly about 25 miles of rail and infrastructure. And we've also included all the Orange County stations. There's 12 of them. You can see the 2 in San Clemente at the bottom. Next slide, please. So the goal of the study is really to look at the climate change stressors that could impact the rail service, our operation and infrastructure. We study the risks related to climate stressors such as mudslides, flooding, severe weather events, coastal surge, sea level rise. And we identify adaptation strategies for the assets based on kind of near-term, mid-term, long-term risks, and analyze or life cycle costs and proposed strategies. And for near term, we're looking at kind of next 5 years. Midterm is kind of 10 to 15 years, and long term is greater than 15 years. In addition to that, we also have our train stations, which will study amenities improvements that provide passenger comfort due to climate stressors such as extreme heat, and also vegetation management strategies for drought and high precipitation at the station. Next slide, please. So out of the study with a system-wide exposure scan, we're looking at these potential stressors, these 5 elements. I got a high heat, wildfire, drought, coastal flooding, and inland flooding. Next slide, please. So from these exposure scans, we identify 3 areas that we need to concentrate and do a more detailed study. And that's the coastal alignment, the Mission Viejo Trench, which is also part of the Oso Creek tributary, and also our passenger rail stations. Next slide, please. This is showing our rail coastal corridor. It's roughly a 7-mile stretch, and it's from Dana Point on the left-hand side to the county line by San Clemente on the right-hand side. Next slide, please. So the sea level rise study based on California Ocean Protection Council's and its sea level rise guidance document. And this graph shows a projected sea level rise in feet on the vertical axis, and also year in increments of decade on the horizontal axis through the year 2100. And we're showing here our scenario we classify as low, medium, and high, and also extreme sea level rise conditions or scenarios. So in this case, we have kind of low and medium at 17% chance, high at a 0.5% chance, and extreme at a greater or less than 0.5% chance of occurrence. And it ranges from kind of the low end 2.5 feet to high end about roughly 10.5 feet in the year 2100. Next slide, please. So this graph shows our existing rail elevation that's highlighted in red, and also overlaid with various scenarios of storm events. So as an example, light blue is a 100-year storm event, and the gray is a 500-year storm event. So this shows where the water levels would be with the storm levels versus where our current track elevation is. Next slide, please. So we take that study with the storm surge and also couple that with our low sea level rise scenario in the year 2100. So this is a graph that's showing where our rail is versus the worst case scenario of a low sea level rise scenario plus storm surge. And you can kind of see in certain areas we have areas of concern for sure. Next slide, please. In this case, we're going with a more extreme case with a high sea level rise scenario coupled with a storm surge. And the storm surge events, you can see in almost all events, our rail will be underwater in this case. Next slide, please. So our study identifies some adaptation options. There are 3 of them in general. So the first is the baseline revetment. It's a picture on the left-hand side. You can see the existing revetment out there. We do have vulnerabilities, as you see in the previous slide. So these options would allow some flexibility. So the baseline is showing our slope and a rock size, kind of based on Metrolink's standard for revetment at the coast, and that's shown on the right-hand side. So that's doing what we're currently doing. 2, the improved revetment option would provide a gentler slope, a heavier rock size, and as well as a higher crest to protect the corridor. And that's not shown here, but just imagine with a different rock size and a higher crest. Next slide, please.
Jason, may I ask where that photo was taken?
I believe this is in San Clemente. I don't know the exact milepost. Okay. Yeah, I can find out.
That looks up by like Cottons, by Cypress Shores. That's my guess there.
Okay.
You're probably pretty close there. Yeah.
Thank you.
So it looks like maybe 206 something. 200.
Oh, okay.
Okay. The third option, it's improved revetment with a seawall. We kind of have a rough sketch of what that might look like. You can see the black circles. Those are the existing revetment size. And if we couple that with a different gradation with a larger rock size with both the purple and red, these are much larger rock size. and also a seawall that's with a seawall panel on top that could accommodate and be extended as needed depending on the scenario that we will experience, and that could protect our infrastructure in this case. So this is the third option. And what's the note in the study is all options 1, 2, and 3 would protect our rail from low, medium, and high sea level rise scenarios through 2100. The most cost effective, which I'll get into a little later, is options 2 and 3. Next slide, please. We also analyzed a relocation option as option 4. This fourth option, as you've seen here, it's to relocate a rail away from the coastline altogether. So this concept was actually developed back in 2004 as part of the low sand programmatic environmental EIR and EIS conducted by Caltrans. And this selected alternative from that was was called the San Clemente Long 2-segment tunnel. It's a double tracking option, and this tunnel would supply 2 tracks from San Onofre State Beach all the way to San Juan Capistrano in around the Avenida Aeroporto area. This is roughly a 9.6 mile segment, and this concept will allow for a station in San Clemente. The rough cost estimate based on that study escalated for inflation and current construction costs. It's roughly $5.2 billion. Next slide, please. So this is the life cycle cost as we look at the cost of all these various scenarios compare against the alternatives we have developed. And the slide would show that the most cost effective is options 2 and 3 in general, roughly the $40 to $50 million range, and the least cost effective life cycle wise, it's the relocation option at $5.2 billion. Next slide, please. So this here's a depiction of the study that showed the importance of the shoreline protection that's currently occurring. It protects not just our rail corridor, also protects the bluffs and all the assets above there. So without the protection, if this were to be relocated to another location, essentially you can see the white line depicting no coastal armoring. That's where that would end up. Next slide, please.
Jason,
Yes.
Doreen Campo Piano has her hand up. Doreen, do you have a question?
I do.
Sorry.
Wasn't
This
sure
is probably a few slides ago. Sorry about that.
Okay, sorry, I can't see any hands raised. We
can't
can
either.
talk about it now, or we can do it at the end.
Yeah, we could do it at the end. I'm just sort of writing some questions.
Okay.
So, and we passed those. So, okay, thanks.
Okay.
Charmaine, I'm sorry, I didn't even see your box on the screen at all. Now I do.
Okay. So this slide is showing where our adaptation strategies and next steps are. So in this case, we will continue to coordinate with Metrolink to monitor and maintain our existing revetment to their standard. We will further study certain areas of concern, such as our bridges and culverts, to make sure we have capacity and any issues, replacement needs. The short and long-term solutions are to use adaptation triggers. So in this case, we're going to have to monitor, monitor yearly how conditions change over time, because it is a projection, as you know. So this projection can change depending on the political will that's out there. So As we reduce greenhouse gas, the condition may be pulled back. As we increase greenhouse gas, this condition may worsen. So it is a flexible option for us to look at, and this way we can continue to monitor how this changes over time. And so that's monitoring all those gauges and storm events using observed data. And monitor future projections, as I mentioned. And there's also when the rail is not expected to meet our performance criteria in this case, this is when we would like to implement potential solutions, what I mentioned earlier, options 1, 2, or 3, to basically protect the infrastructure. And again, the recommended option is really probably option 2 or 3 is more cost effective. All right, next slide, please. So going out of the coastal corridor, the next area of interest was our Mission Viejo Trench. As you know, some of our rail corridor is located in a trench where a lot of drainage and erosion occurs. And this is also adjacent to Oso Creek. And it's also in the tributary in this area. So a lot of flow coming into our rail corridor. And this is the area between milepost 189 and 194 in this 5-mile stretch, roughly. Next slide. Actually, hold on, go back to that slide, sorry, apologize. So based on our study, we looked at both erosion and flooding. So the flooding in this case is well contained. We looked at a 100-year flood, and it's all well contained within the Oso Creek channel, and we're not experiencing any issues with flooding. The coastal, the inland erosion. So we do have erosion as a concern. So the erosion concerns in this case, we are going to look at potentially doing slope paving, kind of shotcrete, to repair some of the slope, and also install additional channels. This is more for sediments and drainage purposes to allow to convey some of that sediment outside of our areas of concern. So this is mainly the erosion issues within this area, and that's the current recommendation. Next slide, please. So moving on to the station adaptation options. So when we looked at these stations, we have various possibilities to make it friendlier to our passengers. So some of the stations are recommended for additional seating and shade structures, as some of the hotter communities to the north of us, such as Buena Park, for example, Anaheim, for example, it's a hotter climate than our coastal climate over here. And also upgrade and add hydration stations for passenger comfort, and changing landscaping type to more drought tolerant, and install drip irrigation system whenever feasible. And some of these station improvements project can be considered as part of our when we go in and modify or improve stations. These could be implemented at that time. Next slide, please. Oh, I'll turn it over to Marissa for the community engagement.
Thank you, Jason.
All right, thank you. So yes, just wanted to quickly go over the kind of stakeholder and community engagement that we implemented during the study. In order to gather feedback throughout the study process, we convened a project working group, which included transit and regulatory agencies, cities, the county, and environmental community representatives. Last August and September, we conducted an online survey that focused on train station amenities and usage during extreme weather. We received more than 1,250 English surveys and 76 Spanish surveys. This input will help guide OCTA when planning for future station improvements. Throughout the survey promotion, we distributed multiple Twitter and Facebook posts and also posted geo-targeted ads. These are the pop-up ads that you see on websites and mobile devices. And just to mention too, obviously at this point, at this time during the pandemic, everything was digital. There had been plans to do pop-ups at train stations and to have promotional materials on the Metrolink trains and all of that good stuff, but that did have to be set aside because of our situation right now. So I wanted to mention that briefly. So in addition, we partnered with Metrolink, who shared our survey with a database of more than 62,000. So that was very beneficial for us. We appreciated their partnership. In total, we received more than 770 web views during the outreach campaign. And just as a reminder, this last point is that the final report is available and can be viewed at octa.net/rail study. And that concludes our presentation, and we are happy to answer questions at this point.
Does anybody on the committee have some questions, please, for either of our speakers?
I have a couple.
Okay, Jareen, let's go.
Okay. So one thing I just wanted to confirm was that relocation option through San Clemente. Did you say it was full tunneling all the way through the city?
Yes, this was the study that was performed by Caltrans back in 2004, and that option was a full two-track tunnel through the city.
Okay.
At that time.
Okay.
And we did not do any additional studies based on that because there was already a tunneling option that was studied at that time. So we're utilizing that data and also projecting the costs forward for our study here.
Okay. And then as far as, because I know some of the options that you're looking at, it looks like are, revetment with seawall or the relocation option. Were any options considered that either elevated the rail line from the existing height through the section in San Clemente, and or some sort of softer solution where you're looking at either beach nourishment or offshore solutions that might, I guess, reduce the impact to the actual beach itself by putting on more revetment and maybe some sort of softer solution?
Yeah, so the kind of the multiple bridge or throughway option, we did take a look at that. It's not I guess feasible, or it's not practical in that sense, because in a way, in order for us to get out of a pinch point, let's say this particular location has a high sea level rise area, we were to raise the track for the ultimate condition, let's say any of the low, medium, or high sea level elevations, we have to raise it fairly high. And if you imagine, if we raise a section of rail, we have to raise quite a long stretch to make that height. So essentially, that will create a also enormous cost for that purpose as well. And then there's additional item pointed out in the study was if we're to do that, also it creates problem for the bluffs as well, because if we're raising our tracks up, and then the seawater would just then go under our structure, and then it will attack the bluffs at that point. So there's a couple of these, but we didn't analyze it to significant detail because it wasn't identified as a scope to analyze some of these major options. But then some of these options, such as relocation and also what we can do to protect our existing right-of-way, that was part of that scope. And then also you mentioned beach nourishment. Related to beach nourishment, our study is primarily focused on our rail right-of-way. we didn't want to identify essentially other mitigations on other people's property in this case. So what we indicated in the study is the coordination will occur with any of the entities or agencies that that's performing that action. And I know there's potential Army Corps, maybe looking at that, State Beach. So all those coordinating partners, but we're not looking at that as an option for us per se.
Okay. And then what has been the because I know you mentioned that there was through the stakeholder process interaction with the environmental community. So I'm curious about their reaction. And then I'm also curious about the California Coastal Commission and what sort of interactions you've had with them and their sort of response to what's been proposed.
Okay. I can hit on, I guess I'll talk about Coastal Commission, some of their comments. I think they prefer one of the items. It's if we're to do revetment. So in this case, I don't think they necessarily support that. They recommend a kind of a softer option, such as cobblestone beaches or cobble beaches or other alternatives, as well as potentially relocating the rail corridor. That was also something that they commented on. So these are some of the items we address in the study as well. A lot of their comments were included in that and how we looked at some of these comments. I don't know if I answer your question. Hope that helps.
Yeah, that helps. Thank you.
Are there any other questions from CAC members?
I have a question. This is Chris Kaczynski. Can you talk a little bit about, I know you're not coordinating with the beach nourishment projects within San Clemente or any other city, but would that impact these walls that you're proposing? Because as the beach erodes, wouldn't that eliminate a lot of those? Or what, can you talk about that a little bit?
The beach nourishment part or the wall in particular?
Well, wouldn't you want to coordinate with the beach nourishment projects? Because as the beach erodes, wouldn't you lose some of the support for the walls? Or not?
Well, in the study, as I recall, the rocks that's there, it's actually in a way help support or help support the beach loss in that sense, because if we just have the wall by itself without any rock revetment in front of it, then the wave action hitting that wall would take more of the beach away directly. Is that what you're referring to?
A little bit. My concern is that, as the beach erodes, those walls that you're building will take the brunt of the waves. So it would be to your benefit to get the beach built up so that so that the waves don't reach those walls. Is that right?
Yeah, I couldn't answer that because the study doesn't really talk about that. What it does talk about is the revetment in front of the wall. It's important that it's there because it will soften the wave action, in which means less material will be taken away as each wave hits the wall or the revetment in this case.
Jason, does the actual footprint of the revetment change per project alternative as far as taking away additional beach width? Because it would have to be wider at the bottom, would it not?
Yes, and
Yes.
and again, this is a study. So what we're currently doing right now, let's say option one, that is within the rail right of way. Options 2 and 3 will likely go outside of the right of way. So in that case, in case a project like that comes through, we will have to coordinate with various agencies to make it happen. So in this case, in case if there is a impact to the beach, and I think those are something that will have to be discussed with the agencies at that point.
Okay, because I could see that being a very big concern for the city
Mhm.
of San Clemente, because as we've mentioned, we have enough beach loss already. And if we're going to lose
Yes.
an additional beach and sand from additional revetment, I could see that being a little bit difficult. So
Yes, I agree. And this, again, this is a study. It's the toolbox of potential options, and any projects that we wish to take on will have to go through the proper environmental process to identify all the concerned stakeholders and how we can make it all work. This is for the study purpose. It's strictly focused on what the agency can do to protect this corridor.
Yeah, and Jordan, that's a really good point, and thank you for the folks from OCT. I thought it was a really good presentation and very informative. But it did trigger in my mind when you said, "Oh, we're working on stuff that's within our right of way." It made me think, how far does your right of way go? I mean, in certain places that revetment, like it's wide and getting wider. So I'm curious as to how much right of way you actually have there. But I would say my one comment or concern would be this seawall option, and I don't know how many folks from the city of San Clemente really honestly took a look at it, but that has a really big, potential to impact viewshed from folks walking on the trail. I mean, as I see it, the depiction in there, it's the option with the seawall plus the addition is like, it's as tall as a train. So, I mean, I think about like folks in San Clemente, if you're familiar with the beach trail, like by Linda Lane, where the trail's at grade, the tracks are at grade. If they were to put a seawall in there, you would be walking on the trail and not be able to see the ocean. So that's kind of a concern, I guess, but I understand what the intent of the study was. Obviously, you got to, work with what you have, but I definitely see that as an issue coming down the tracks, is if you're blocking viewshed from that trail, folks are going to be concerned about that.
Yeah, I understand that point totally. So again, this is a toolbox, so it does allow us some flexibility, and again, we're also looking at the study. It's a very long duration, right? It's to year 2100, and again, that curve could be flattened depending on what the political will is out there, right? And it could be increased. So that's why our study gave us kind of this flexibility to do what we can do depending on what happens next. Is this curve is not fixed.
Jason, what are your next steps in taking this as this is the toolbox that you put together for the railroad and for transportation, for OCTA, for the Orange County Transportation Authority, along with Caltrans. What is your next step?
So my next step on this particular front, so we actually have our partners with Metrolink. So they are also working on a study in this case, but their study is system-wide. So our goal here is some of the, go back to the, Marissa, let me go back to the recommendation slide related to the coastal section. We'll continue to coordinate with Metrolink. Actually, we just went past it. Sorry, go up a couple slides. I think slide. I miss it. Sorry, was that slide? Go down. A couple more. almost right there. Okay. So we'll continue to coordinate. Wait, oh, sorry, missed it right there. All right, thank you. Sorry, one more. Next slide.
I
There we go.
apologize. Every
Okay.
time I have to use my mouse, then the keyboard doesn't work properly. So I'm having to toggle back and forth to unmute. So I'll just stay unmuted. Tell me when I'm at the right spot, Jason.
Okay. Right there, right there. Okay.
Okay, I apologize.
We go to the next slide. Here, okay, let's stop there. So Metrolink is our railroad operator and maintainer. So they're currently maintaining the revetment to their standards. So as we shown in the slide previously. So further studies is recommended in the study on some of the bridges and culverts. So this is the part on the next step. We'll be passing this recommendation on to Metrolink in their study so they can analyze this further to see if there's a need for kind of replacement or a need to expand to add capacity for that portion. And then for some of our solutions as the next step is really looking at these adaptation triggers. So looking at current conditions and also monitoring this in an annual basis to see if it changes over time. And if we do see changes over time that we see potentially our rail may be in jeopardy, and that's when we'll do a study to further a potential solution as a project. So this time frame is unknown. So this is why the flexibility is given to us to just continue to monitor as this curve is not set.
Okay.
I don't know if that helps. So the performance criteria is really just to keep the water from overtopping the rail. We need to be able to operate. So with that, as an example, if we see let's say 1 foot sea level rise, our threshold, and if we see as the current data shows that there's, let's say there's a 1/2 foot sea level rise, that could be our trigger point to do something about it before we reaches that threshold. And that period of time could be over 10 years or longer, because just looking at how long projects take. So we would determine when we need to start that process.
Okay. Thank you for that response. But in that same vein, I understand that this was done using the right-of-way for OCTA and the railroad. You made a comment that 2 and 3 would probably be the most recommended that you would put forward to Metrolink because of the lowest in cost. But is that also in your mind and in your position, is that the best, are those the best solutions for the quality, for the environment, for our beaches?
That had to be analyzed when we take this on as a project. When the time comes, it had to be analyzed which one of these solution is the best for all the factors that goes into a project.
Well, I know that the California Coastal Commission right now is very staunchly trying to go away from revetments and walls as ways to mitigate sea level rise, because they are fearing it is taking the sand away, as one of my colleagues mentioned, and you mentioned as well. And I think that would be the last choice that they would choose in a situation like this. I believe that they would lean towards managed retreat and a change of environment. And I agree with Joreen in terms of they would approve a softer approach if that was feasible. And probably in some portions of this coastline that could be feasible. Did you find any locations that a softer approach might work? To follow up on, I think, what Joreen or one of my colleagues mentioned, there's certain sections in your rail path that have different dynamics to their geographics. Could some of those locations have a softer solution?
It's possible. I didn't focus on that in the presentation. I had to get back to you on that. I only focus on the most dire conditions out there. So.
Yeah, and I think Susan, because he mentioned that they were only looking for solutions within the right of way itself and not sort of outside the right of way, whereas right. I see there could potentially be some environmentally friendlier solution that might be outside of the right of way. So like, I mean, these would be big. I mean, I don't know how much these things would cost, but like offshore, you know, these barrier islands that you could kind of build to kind of deflect the wave action from coming in areas of concern, you know, artificial reefs or things like that. That's just sort of stop the wave action from doing damage, you know, could be considered, or retreat at some locations. But I think you said that one was the $51 billion price tag, which was a lot.
Yes, that's what he did say.
Yeah.
My other question was, you were required to have 3 different committees to give input on this, correct? And one of them were people who had environmental concerns. What were the kinds of concerns, if you don't mind sharing those, that the environmentalists shared with you?
So just to chime in really quick, we weren't required, and Jason, correct me if I'm wrong, we weren't required, but it's just something that we always do during our studies, is involving our stakeholders. So the project working group included parts of the environmental community. The Coastal Commission was part of the project working group and actually was attended all of the meetings. But I know we did get some direct comments from like the Surfrider Foundation. Maybe Jason can mention what they commented on, because they did send us a letter and we have met with them. But in general, I would say I think a lot of the focus was on the sea level rise versus any of the other topics. That was definitely the focus. But I can let Jason take over from here.
Okay. Yeah, thanks for that, Marissa. Yeah, so definitely similar concerns that this committee has as well. So one of their comment was prefer to relocate our railway and remove the armory altogether. So that was one of their comments. I'm just scrolling through, and then also incorporate the extreme sea level rise scenario, which we did as well, some of the comments that they have. So as you've seen, we have kind of the low, medium, high, and then we also add an extreme sea level rise scenario, and that's per California Ocean Protection Council guidance. They'll like to see this extreme condition highlighted as well. Let's see, we have they like the regional approach to this issue, and I think that was the general comments that they have. And again, we understand the regional importance of this as well. So it's definitely not something that can be done by itself and avoid. So there's definitely a regional consideration, as OC Parks also mentioned on some of the northern part of the corridor by Dana Point. They're experiencing issues. I think OC Parks also mentioned they're experiencing some issues as well. I mean, not OC Parks, state parks. And then there's beach nourishment efforts that's currently planned. So those are all items that we're aware of. So.
Well, and on that note, we're talking about regional committees and coalitions, et cetera. We were approached to be, to see if we had an interest in that. And this committee does have an interest in joining a regional type of coalition that would work together with beach and coastal nourishment. And I'm wondering, in light of this project that you're working with, you said you may have that opportunity down the road, depending on what is chosen, you may have to or choose to work with coalitions where you would merge ideas and perhaps come up with things. Would that include, do you think, maybe providing funds or support for these kinds of coalitions to work effectively?
That I can't answer. I think the approach is always to make sure when we do any kind of projects, we work with all the local jurisdictions and as well as all the agencies that's necessary to make sure the project is susceptible as well, right? So it's not necessarily supporting a particular project or not supporting a project. But it's too far in advance to be able to talk about that at this point. But,
Okay. But something to think about. I think,
yes.
again, working together would be would be the most productive way to save our beaches and restore as much as we can, or keep as much as we can, and also have the least amount of impact on our infrastructure, including rail and highways, etc. I'm sure you agree with that.
Mm-hmm.
Cynthia, I see your hand up.
Yes, we have a question that was submitted for this particular item, and I'd like to read that because it relates to what you just asked, Susan. Is that okay?
Yes, please.
Question comes from Chris Webb from Moffett and Nickel, and he asks, assuming the revetment improvement options are for the near term and the relocation of rail is for the long-term future, would the OCTA consider participating in a regional coalition to work at widening beaches and increasing the buffer from waves over the near and midterm time horizons? I think it's just asking if you'd participate in a regional coalition, which is what Susan just asked, or something similar. I don't think it's about funding or supporting necessarily, but at least being at the table, I think, to discuss.
Yes, definitely. We agree we should be at the table to discuss all the options, but not necessarily funding. I think that's a different topic there. Or regarding, I think his question related to some of the options that I mentioned earlier, the study does show that both options 1, 2, and 3 can handle the sea level rise to the low, medium, and high scenarios to the year 2100. So the option to relocate in this case, it's not cost effective.
Okay. Thank you, Jason. Are there any other questions? Let me see. I wrote one other thing down. I was looking at the adaptation. When you go on and get involved with Metrolink, et cetera, will you be having people from Caltrans in those meetings as well, or would those be separate contacts?
I mean, discussion related to the strategies?
Yes. Because
So,
Caltrans has some highways and things of that nature to be thinking about.
our plans to work with Metrolink on some of these next steps. With Caltrans, the study itself, once it's finalized, in this case, it's already finalized. The Caltrans folks, I believe, will also have their version of the publication on their website. And I don't know what their next step is. I know they also have other studies in different types of transportation sectors that they're funding. I'm not sure if it's all interrelated, so I couldn't answer that question.
Okay.
And just to clarify too, so Caltrans was not only a part of this study, but they actually funded the study. I'm correct, right,
Yes.
Jason? Yes.
Correct.
So
They funded the
they're
study.
involved. They're involved now as well.
Right.
Well, that's what I thought. That's why I thought you'd be sitting down at the table with Caltrans as well to see what their thoughts were with your results and recommendations.
Yeah, they're involved in the development of this final strategy as well.
Okay. So some consideration from Caltrans regarding their highways and byways, particularly those that run close to the railroads that we have, the tracks that are laid, would probably come up in those further discussions after they see your recommendations and adaptation suggestions, correct?
Yeah, again, I couldn't answer that on their behalf, so I'm assuming they will take the study and look at what other things we need to work on, or they need to fund to look at future studies.
Okay.
And then,
I guess I was thinking that you were all doing it jointly, but what you're saying is you just did the study, and from this point forward, while you might meet with them, each of them have their own particular interest, self-interest as well.
Well, they funded this study, and the
Right.
study has concluded. So, and as far as what other studies they will fund, I couldn't answer that.
Okay.
and then Jason, where is this as far as the environmental process, as far as NEPA and CEQA? Are they going to carry these alternatives forward into like an EIS, EIR, or what's the plan with that?
Good question.
No, this is really just a study. In this case, is a toolbox for us to evaluate what we need to do when the time comes. And I think you're referring to when we take the next step as far as if we do need to do any type of these options, and that will become a project where we'll go through the proper process to further study and as well as do the design, environmental design as well.
Okay.
So none of these are actual projects, just a study of what we can do here.
Okay.
And I have one last question. Marissa, you said when you do these studies and you want to engage the community, do you send out notices? I recall at times you sent out notices to recruit people to answer survey questions or things of that nature. Do you send those to different sectors of people, or is it generally random selection, or how does this work for OCTA?
No, it's definitely targeted. So I do planning studies throughout the county, various ones. So related to transit, something like this one, and long-range transportation planning, like all kinds of different stuff. And in every situation, when taking on a study, we assess the area. So like the other one I'm working on right now is the South Orange County multimodal transportation study. So for that one, for instance, obviously the focus is all in the South County area. We always partner heavily with the cities. And so we definitely not only partner with them, but we rely on them to help us build our stakeholder lists. Who are the right people, given the subject matter, who are the people that are, in your community that we should be adding to our stakeholder database. We also work with the cities, and I call it a toolkit. I give them, we send them toolkits so that they have all the communications and information that they need. It's all ready for them to send out via e-blast or social media posts, or various ways of communicating with the public. So for this one in particular, yes, we partnered with MetroLink. It was all about the outreach component was about the station amenities. So we were focused on the Metrolink riders, and so that's where the focus was. But definitely, again, partnering with all the corridor cities and helping spread the word so that all the various communities are aware of the study and trying to gather feedback.
Okay, great. Thank you. Any other questions for our wonderful speakers? I see no lights on and no hands and no takers. I want to thank you very much, Jason and Marissa, for really a great presentation today. I know we took up a lot more time than we intended, but this was very fruitful, and I think we'll take this information with us and track you along as you go on to your ways, and probably see what's going to happen with the Coastal Commission and some of the other aspects of this as well. Thank you so very much. I really appreciate it. And Marissa, we'll look forward to seeing that second part that you're going to forward to us tomorrow. Thank you. And if you have any questions from us ever, feel free to contact us.
Yes, and thank you,
Susan. Thanks for
All right,
having us.
great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. All righty. Let us go on to, we're going to go back up to approval of minutes for February 11th. So bear with me for a second while I reorganize my papers and get back to my things here. Just a second.
And hold on, Charlie Smith is trying to log in. Let me check in with IT and
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
I'm sorry, Charlie Smith is he's in the lobby. If you can wait and we can try and get him in. I'm going to check with IT to let Charlie in, okay?
Oh, okay.
Mr. Smith is currently entering the Zoom.
Perfect, thank you. Okay. Hi, Chris.
Okay, hold on. I'm trying to find my minutes here.
That was a good discussion. I wish I could ask the question, but all good. Don't worry about it. Are they going to be, is OCTA going to be sending around that presentation?
Yes, and you have that. Cynthia sent that to
Oh,
us
did
all.
she send it? Great. Thank you.
Yes.
So
Here,
Charlie, you were able to listen to it while you were in the waiting room?
Yeah, I could hear it. I just couldn't, I realized pretty quickly I wasn't able to speak because I asked a question and I was talking to myself. So it was wonderful. I had a conversation with myself.
I'm sorry. I'm not doing very good with the lobby.
Don't even worry about it. It's my fault.
Sorry.
I was having dinner with my family. I lost track of time.
Okay.
Hold on a second. I had some changes on the minutes. All right. I'm gonna take my picture off so I can move around here a bit. If you don't mind, just a second. Let's put these. Where's that? Well, I cannot find. Minutes. Just another second. I have one more place to check. I'm sorry it took so much time there. Well, I wanted to go through the minutes and I cannot find my copy of the minutes. I have no idea. It must have gotten stuck in one of these wider packages, this thicker package. Does anybody have any comments about the minutes? No? Yes, no, maybe so? Well, I did. And
Is it in your agenda packet?
yeah, no, I have my agenda packet. It was right here. I must have moved it to, oh, here's one page, okay. This is the only page that I marked on anyway. Alrighty. Is everybody ready to go on with the minutes with me? I hear no comments, so I'm thinking yes.
So, Susan.
Okay. On the minutes, I had a comment recommending a change here on item 10 for items from staff, potential future agenda items. And it's the second paragraph in 10A, where you start with committee members added, presentation from the project manager, etc. I just changed that to make it very simple. Chair Ambrose recommended a presentation with OCTA, with the project manager of OCTA on the rail infrastructure study. CAC members agreed unanimously, with Chair Ambrose arranging for the speaker for the March or April agenda. And now I lost my picture again. Wow.
Susan, we can see you. You're going to have to repeat because that's rewriting that whole sentence, and I'm going to have to write it down in detail.
Oh, I can't even. Let's see. I'll be happy to repeat it. It says, Chair Ambrose recommended a presentation.
Okay, hold on. Okay.
With the OCTA project manager
Okay.
for the rail infrastructure study. Not railroad, just rail. Period. CAC members unanimously agreed. And Chair Ambrose will arrange for the speaker for the March or April agenda.
Is that already in there? No. Okay. Repeat that. Chair Ambrose will
Arrange for the speaker for the March or April agenda.
Okay.
And that is, oh, there's one other on page 5. And item 11, the third paragraph, the third sentence, which begins with, will forward the flyer advertising the event, comma, listing the learning topics. Well, I'm not sure what learning topics are. I deleted learning. Listing the topics, comma, and identifying the speakers, blah, 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 blah.
So you just want to remove the word listing?
I want to remove the word learning.
Oh, learning. Okay.
And that is all for me. If nobody else has any changes or amendments to the minutes, I will make a motion to accept the minutes with amendments. May I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Susan, this is Chris Kaczynski. I have to abstain.
Thank you. And Joe, did you vote?
Yes, aye.
Thank you very much. And I'm an aye, so that is unanimous, Cynthia. Oh, except for one abstention. I'm sorry, Chris. Thank you.
Susan, it kind of cut out for me. Who seconded that motion?
I did, Cynthia. It's Charlie.
It was Charlie.
Okay, Charlie, thank you.
Thank you very much. All righty. Cynthia, are you cool? We can move on.
Yeah, hold on here.
Right.
Okay, I'm ready.
Thank you very much. Let us move on to old business. Cynthia, I'm calling on you to discuss the next two items, A and B. First, the bottle refill station update. And that was a question that we had about where we could put our bottle refill station on that east wall at T Street. Oh, darn it. What is wrong with my computer? I don't even know.
We can hear you. We can see you, Susan.
Okay, but I can't see anything on the screen, but
Okay.
okay, I don't need to. Okay. All right.
So I have not heard back from the maintenance manager in regards to cost. So what I'm going to do is before the next meeting is just ask him, we're looking at having a refill station attached to the wall. So I'll look at the cost for the ones attached to the wall and get an estimate on installation, just in the center of the wall. We'll just see how much that costs and move forward from there. And then I can provide the coastal advisory committee with that cost estimate.
You know, Cynthia, I think that we should do it as we asked last time. I think we should get the estimates for the outer ends of the wall, you know, still on that face, as well as that center position. Because I don't want to keep coming back meeting after meeting with just one more point of information and another point of information. The more information we can have that will allow us to move forward, so I can start looking for some fundraising and we can actually get some action. That's the way I would prefer to go.
Okay.
And does anybody else have a comment about that? No? Okay, great. So Cynthia, that's the action on that item.
I guess I do have one quick question. So does the city have a clear path towards it? Does the city have a clear path towards accepting private donations? Is that process like fixed, ready to go? If we came up with the money, the city would say, yep, you can give it to us?
We still have to take it to the city and get final approval. They're the final approval.
Okay, cool. But okay, sounds good.
Would it be highly unusual? I mean, someone like the Friends of San Clemente, right? Isn't that they typically partner with the city on things like this, right?
Yes, and I have been referred to them. I approached them, and they were at that time, you know, Bill Hart has taken over the leadership of that group, or rather, I shouldn't say taken over. He was, I think he volunteered to take that on. John Dory is no longer the director, but he sits on the board of directors and he's still greatly involved. But Bill now has that seat, and he and I had a conversation. He was fresh to the position, so he wasn't really in a position to give a commitment to me one way or the other. So he said he was meeting with Samantha in February, and I could talk to him after that date. So I'll give him a ring next week and see where he is with the budget. So,
you know, I think Joe's brought up a good point. Let me check that it's okay for private citizens to, or businesses, et cetera, a private entity, to provide money to the city to install something. I think that's fine because I believe that maybe some lights for a baseball field were funded by a private party. So I'll just check with finance and report back on that too, just to make sure that we've got the appropriate process in place, that if there are funds donated by a private party, that it's accessible by the city.
oh, well, I think it is. Cynthia, if you recall when this was just being discussed, when we turned in our plan, our annual plan, the mayor asked me specifically how I would do the fundraising and wished me well in doing the fundraising. I mentioned that, pardon me? I mentioned that that the Pier, Pure Pride had gotten a single donor for their water refill station. And I was corrected later on by one of their members who said, no, they gave a large donation, I think of 5 or 10 grand. And then that money was all collected and given to the city to spend, but the water refill station was part of the deal for funding. So yes, they do accept private. She said so right there and then. She said, well, good luck out in the community. You can go through that extra effort if you want, but she answered that, and it's on video on a city council meeting.
All right.
I think that was in October or November when we finally got our talk at the podium. Or not even at the podium. I think we were doing home talks, weren't we? Yes. Anyway, so that's my 2 cents worth on that. But if you want to find out, feel free. But that was on the record. And Joe, your question wasn't, can we fund it privately? Was it? I thought you were asking me if we could just jump right into it when we get the okay.
No, that's correct. I just wanted to make sure that the city had a mechanism in place to accept private donations, right? Like this public-private partnership. You know, do they have a means? I know Pure Pride has done it and other organizations have. I just want to make sure that folks go into that with eyes open and understand the process of what transferring money to the city would entail.
Yeah.
It sounds like they've got a process. So if everybody's comfortable with that, then that's fine.
Yes. Thank you, Joe. All righty. Cynthia, next, would you enlighten us on the drive-in movie night update?
Okay, so we have a date of April 17th, Saturday, to show the Lorax. The movie is scheduled to be shown at Vista Hermosa Sports Park. And we're working through logistics with Parks and Recreation staff. They have hosted at least one movie before, so we're really relying on them to help us with guidance. We're looking at purchasing some swag, which is stuff we all get, to put in like a reusable bag and maybe some ideas like a reusable straws and utensils, and maybe some poppy seeds. I don't know, just some environmental type related products to slip into a bag that we can hand to each vehicle when they pull in. Another option is for food. I think before that there was a local pizza place that was available to accept orders even beforehand, and then they delivered twice during the movie before, and maybe twice. Maybe it was always before the movie, but so we're looking at trying to locate a local restaurant that might be willing to be part of that. If you folks have any ideas, let me know on any local restaurants so we can start asking around. We're starting a press release, starting a flyer. I did send to the Coastal Advisory Committee the advertisement, just a clip of the advertisement that's going to go in the San Clemente magazine, and that will be going out March 17th to all the households. And the cost is $15 per vehicle for the movie. And it would start at about 7:30, which is about dusk at that time of the year. So, any questions?
You know, I saw that the movie is 1 hour and 26 minutes long, and I just wanted to note that. And it's the 2012 version of the Lorax, and that's all fine and good. But I was wondering, I saw the ad. I don't know what happened to my papers, got so screwed up here. But and there's not really a comment on there about and the environment. It only says sponsored or hosted by or whatever, the Coastal Advisory Committee and Environmental Services. Are you just relying, because there's not also, remember I thought we were going to do an environmental short a real life environmental short to go with our movies. I like the fact that this is the Lorax, so it's very user friendly. But do you think we need to add just a little quip that he could be saying about like help protect our environment, or if anybody else has any other ideas? Because there's probably some people in town that don't know about the Lorax, period. Not everybody was a Dr. Seuss fan.
So the ad, there was one space left in that magazine and they were ready to go to print that day. And so they Parks and Rec quickly threw that ad together. So it was really pretty much a 30-minute discussion on what to put on that ad. But we'll create a flyer and we can look at, putting more detail in an actual flyer.
Well, yes, and if that's a situation, yes, go with what you had. But when you advertise it in your flyer or in the SE Times or online or however else you're going to advertise it in the homes with water bills or whatever, please do consider. And if anybody has any ideas, all of you are very creative of some phrases that you could put in. We could talk about them. When are you going to print, Cynthia?
For the San Clemente magazine?
Or whatever. When are you going to do marketing?
We just got all the information this week. So San Clemente magazine's already off to the printer. Next week we'll start doing some layout on flyers and other Facebook and Instagram posts. I don't know when we're going to actually release it. So.
Okay, well, here's what I'm trying to get from my colleagues here. If anybody has any ideas of something short and witty to put on the ad that could be a quip from the Lorax or however you see it that mentions the environment or something of that nature, so they know there's a purpose for this. Yes, it's an entertaining film, very family oriented, etc., and it's got a moral and ethics and all of the above. But is there something that would further get their attention, knowing that because we're sponsoring Coastal Advisory and Environmental Services, that this is, a good-natured environmental plus film? So can you think about something and send your phrases to Cynthia or send them to all of us, and we can comment on them, and or does somebody, and somebody having another idea?
Well, I know that the Lorax, he has a lot of quotes that we could try and pull a quote from actually what the Lorax actually says in the movie.
That is a great idea.
Yeah.
So very simple.
We'll look into that. And then, because I think we want to make sure that it is a Disney movie. We don't want to start saying something that Disney for some reason might not agree with, or the way we phrase it, right? So in our advertising, but the Lorax does have some pretty good quotes that we can pull out that's clearly referencing the environment.
Okay, I think that's a great idea. In fact, I like that idea a lot. Does everybody agree? Can I have some yeses if you agree, please? Joe? Doreen?
Yes, I think that's a great idea.
Chris?
Yep. Yeah, I think it's a good idea too.
Charlie?
Yeah, seems fine.
Okay. And Joe? Joe took a little break there. Okay, so Cynthia, that's a great idea. Let's go ahead and move forward with that, and then keep us posted, please.
Okay, yes, I will.
Thank you very much. Good job. Let's go on to communications, bacteriological report. Cynthia, is there anything that you want to point out while I try to find my next page?
Sure. I'll point out that we have no exceedances. No bacteria. Well, and that's been, and it's good to note, especially at the pier, that we haven't seen exceedances at the pier in several months now, which is pretty important. So I really think that the pier netting is actually working, reducing the amount of fecal matter from the pigeons falling into the ocean.
Oh, I was going to ask you that question. So thank you. You anticipated that and you got that right answer. Great. That's great news. What were the numbers for Pochi and the pier?
Well, it looks like Pochi, well, I mean, they're in there. They're all underneath the water quality objectives. They're all protective of human health.
Okay.
Let's see the pier. Pier zero. Pier zero looks really low, actually, the numbers in there. Pochi's a little bit higher. Pochi's going to be our next problem, is the next area of focus. It seems like we have the pier addressed, except for basically some of the comments from the public input, which we have been addressing. And then, but Pochi is going to be our challenge there during dry weather. So.
Hey, Cynthia, quick question. So just noting that middle column there, the 212 column, rain .04, is there do we not measure after rainfall? It would seem to me that that would be an important time to measure. Am I missing something?
So the County of Orange, I don't honestly know exactly when they go out after a rainfall. If it's raining and stormy, they just generally post an advisory across all the beaches, and they don't necessarily sample right after a rainfall. I think that that's going to have to start because we are going to have wet weather objectives. Right now we're in, we have to have dry weather bacteria, TMDL objectives. But by 2031, we have to meet wet weather requirements, which does allow some exceedances. Whereas dry weather, pretty much they don't want to see any exceedances of the bacteria water quality objectives. So the 12th, 17th, I think that may have just been the next day that they had scheduled to sample on February 17th. I think they usually sample on Tuesdays, but that Monday was probably President's Day. And
got it. Okay.
So they deferred it.
Yeah, just to be sorry, to make sure I'm understanding. It wasn't as if they were going to test and they didn't test because it was raining. That's not what it's saying, right?
No.
Okay.
No, I think previously our bacteria reports a few years ago, we didn't have the tide in there and we didn't have the rain showing these columns, but we kind of wanted to add that in to see if subsequent to a rain event, if there was some exceedances, depending on when they sampled. You know, if it was right after a rain event, you could sometimes see exceedances or maybe correlate that. And then we put the tide in there really more for Pochi. Because Pochi, when the tide is high, it can breach the sand and draw the pond water out into the ocean. And that pond water could have excessive bacteria levels that could impact the shoreline waters. So that's why we have the tide information in there as well.
All right. Thank you very much.
Okay.
I am going to move on to item 9.
And Susan, I'm sorry, let me just jump in. We usually would have the Clean Ocean Program update, which would show all of the inspections, any violations, a little bit of the solid waste recycling data. We just didn't have that all gathered together by the time this got printed. So I'll bring back that information in the next meeting.
April? Okay,
Yes.
great.
Okay, so.
Thank you. I was wondering about that. I'm glad you mentioned it. All righty, we're ready to move on to item 9. And that is reports. And I believe I'm up first with reports on the conference, the UCI conference, implementing and scaling resilient solutions in coastal California. I have to say this was a really intense conference. It started at 9 and ended about 12:30 for March 2nd and March 3rd. they had about, I can tell you right now, 3, 6, 9, 12, 13, about 24, 25 different speakers in those 2 mornings total. So each person got about 13 minutes. Some got a little less and some got a little more. The keynote speakers got a little more, but they had ample slides to show. And believe me, when they had good discussion going on, they were asked to kind of move along because they only had 2 minutes left, etc. It was a very fast-paced conference, and I highly recommend it. This conference was the 6th annual coastal resiliency workshop that UCI has sponsored, and the themes were the state priorities and future goals, best practices to prepare and scale solutions, approaches to ensure equity in decision making and policy planning and implementation, as well as shoreline management, impacts from wildfires rather, and funding for planning and adaptation. And the topics ranged from institutionalizing coastal resilience policy and regulations, to preparing ecosystems and assets, to ensuring equity and environmental justice, to financing resiliency, and that was a big one. There was closing remarks on the end from Gary Griggs, who was professor of earth sciences in UC Santa Cruz. And by the way, the speakers all came from highly esteemed organizations or universities or agencies, etc., and have just a wealth of experience and expertise amongst them. The second day was involving implementing effective sediment management solutions, living shoreline resiliency, responding to wildfire impacts on coastal ecosystems, and that was a really good one, scaling coastal resiliency solutions. And then the closing marks by Charles Lester, he's the director of Ocean and Coastal Policy Center in the Marine Science Institute of the University of California at Santa Barbara. So this was all very high level technical information for the most part. People did come from state parks and all kinds of counties and states, by the way. Florida had an excellent presentation on how they got the business community to invest actually money and get paybacks with results of adaptation kinds of features that protected their properties more than they were protected. That was just an amazing conference. And the good news is you can watch it live yourself. I have you just go to coast-quest.org. Cynthia has these things written down, and I talked to her earlier this afternoon, and she's agreed to send you the email address tomorrow morning or tomorrow at some point. So in case you want to do some weekend watching, and you can go straight to this website of Coastal Quest, which is affiliated with UCI. And they have what looks like just the front page of the workshop announcement, but there's a bar there that says watch day 2 or watch March 2nd. And you just click on that big black or that marker there that says watch. And by the way, when you click on there, you'll go to the top line and it says conferences. So when you click on conferences, and you can choose the UCI Coastal Resiliency Conference, and then it opens up into that page that I just described. And then when you click on one of those, you can watch the whole thing. You can section them off and watch 12 minutes at a time or 13 minutes at a time. They do take questions after some of those. So I actually think, including the questions, each person probably only got about 10 minutes to speak. And all the Q&As were also available to read. And so you can pursue that as well yourselves on your own time and schedules, rather than my going, and I've lost everybody again, but rather than my going through every single detail on these presentations, because each of you will look to something and really latch on. They had new planning types of and scaling programs that San Francisco Bay Conservation. There's just all kinds of wonderful things to look up. I know that Joreen and Joe, you'd probably be interested in those the new measuring units that have been developed. All kinds of things like this. So I'm going to close on this. If you have any further questions, I can take them now. Otherwise, I encourage you greatly to just pick any one of those topics. And you have, by the way, I sent to you after our last meeting the agenda for this conference. And so you can see for yourself who's speaking. So when you watch, you can move the meter along to each speaker, because they identify themselves, and the agenda itself is very detailed. So you know, for example, that Doug George, the NERRS Science Collaborative Program Manager of the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, is going to give you 10 minutes about what he thinks at NOAA. So it's great. You will really enjoy it. So with that, if no questions from any of you, I'm going to move on to my next item, which is a legislative update. And the first thing I'm going to tell you is at the last meeting of the Ocean Pacific Council, you may have seen these articles in the newspaper, various newspapers. The Ocean Pacific Council, as I mentioned to you, is a cabinet level type of council rather, and they urged the passing of plastic reduction measures to the point of not only manufactured plastics, a possible ban of cigarette filters, establishing a United Nations plastics waste measure, and reducing plastic content in commercial fishing gear. I mean, they just say it's time to say enough is enough. So they are going strong with that, and those will be put into pieces of legislation right now. In another article that I sent you, that legislators are rushing to create laws on all of these issues due to sea level rise and coastal resiliency. I have 41 pages of legislation, and some that are explained or a little more detailed. However, I could not attend the Coastal Commission meetings because I couldn't get an agenda. Their online site was clogged, and they just said they're having technical difficulties. So I was not able to find out when their legislative review would be starting. And I still haven't found out. However, I did dig deep, and I can tell you some of the biggest bills right now, the most important bills, are that they're priority legislation for the Coastal Commission. And one is some amendments to the Coastal Act. And this was a bill that was introduced last year or the year before, SB 1100. Now it's SB 1, and it's relative to the Coastal Act. Basically, it's involving the Coastal Commission in other kinds of things in the Coastal Act. I'm going to read these to you, forgive me, but I got these at the last minute today, so I quickly highlighted some key points here. So right now, the bill would amend the Coastal Act in the Public Relations Code. In essence, so it's going to codify some of the things that the Coastal Commission wants to have under their belt that would be in the Coastal Act that gives them the authority to do these things. So it includes the goal of anticipating, assessing, planning for, minimizing, and mitigating the adverse environmental and economic effects of sea level rise within the coastal zone. And it would require the Coastal Commission to adopt recommendations and guidelines for the identification, assessment, minimization, and mitigation of sea level rise within each local coastal program. And it would require the Coastal Commission to take into account the effects of sea level rise in coastal resource planning and management policies and activities. These are all big deals. It was also required the state and regional agencies to identify, assess, and to the extent feasible and consistent with their statutory authorities, minimize and mitigate the impacts of sea level rise. You can see the focus and attention is on sea level rise. It's also on complying with Governor Newsom's act of using natural ways to reduce environmental pollutants. And that is the last day for policies. Hold on just a second here. The last day to submit bills to the Ledge Council was January 22nd, but the last day for bills to be introduced was February 19th. Spring recess is March 25th, and then they come back and the legislature reconvenes April 5th. I could read you other bills that are pertinent to these same kinds of discussions, including some of them really. There was one in here that I wanted to share with Jason. I might send it to him and Marissa about the walls and revetments. But it clearly talks about not wanting to approve, to be very cautious about approving any revetment or armoring projects that would affect sea life, marine life, life in general, or the health of the beach, etc. So those kinds of things are coming up in legislation, and we will see more of them as more of the legislators get together. And there's some of the legislators now are putting in some amendments. There's some amendments just to this SB1, for example, that I just got today. But I'd like to continue this, if you don't mind, to April, where I will give you a full report on the key pieces of legislation, which has some date and actions on them. If that's okay with you, that's what I'd like to do. I'd like to be a little more professional than just giving you this little brief overview. But it was beyond my scope. I could not get the information. So even calling the legislative services in Sacramento, that takes a long time because you have to type in each one of these separately, and I didn't know the bill numbers. So for all those reasons, I will have this. I have now a buddy in the Coastal Commission office who will help me get this stuff sooner than later. And so we have a deal. So if you're okay with my enlightening you in April, it won't be too late because our meeting is April 8th and they are coming back on April 5th. So is everybody agreeable to that I can continue this to April 8th?
That'd be great.
Yes.
Yes for Charlie?
Yeah.
Joe? Chris, yes? Joe?
Yes.
Yep. Yeah. Look forward to some more information, Susan.
Great. And Jareen?
Yes.
Okay, good. Thank you very much. And I apologize for that. But as I said, it was out of my control. When I finally did latch on to the Coastal Commission, they actually went into closed session for the whole afternoon on yesterday. So I wouldn't have gotten anything, but I know now that I missed the legislative session. All right, moving along. And I also don't have my second page to the agenda. Cynthia, do you want to help me out here? What's after reports?
Sure. It is city staff reports. And so I can mention a little bit about the Clean Ocean Fee renewal update.
Perfect.
Okay. And so we're still doing some fee analysis. We're looking at different scenarios, and we might even go down to a really specific parcel analysis, which might take a little bit of more time, but make it more specific and make sure we roll in all the parcels that should be assigned a fee, and maybe also make different categories possibly. Right now we have 4 categories, which are single family home, commercial, industrial, and then those that are on private and public streets. One of the challenges we have right now is that our GIS layer is not accurate on what's public and private streets. So we want to make sure that we get that layer finished to make sure that we're going to assign the appropriate categories to each of the parcels in the city. So, but we have time because there's been a delay due to COVID. We're looking at targeting maybe the fall to go to vote, but we still need to take that before city council to get their perspective and what they think on when we would go to the vote to the property owners. Okay.
For Clean Ocean.
Clean Ocean fee.
You know what I'd like, and I don't know what my colleagues think about this. I would love Dave to come in with you in our April meeting and give us an overview of the budget and the discussions that are happening. Because I saw in the minutes that you were meeting, staff was meeting with the interim city manager to discuss these things, and you would have some decisions done in April. We're meeting April 8th, and I, for one, and I think our whole committee should want to know what's going on with the Clean Ocean fee. I, for one, am thinking that another year is too late. There's not going to be enough money in our budget, especially with COVID causes, to be able to do some of the beach and other kinds of projects, not just beach, other kinds of projects that the Clean Ocean fee covers. I'm a little concerned about that. So I'm going to make that recommendation for another item on the agenda. So remind me when we get there at the very end of this discussion, and I'd like all my colleagues to think about that too. I'd like your support on this. I think that all of us need to know a little bit more about behind the scenes here.
Okay, I don't know that I'll have much more to report in detail by April, but.
Okay, I can call Dave myself and invite him and see what he says. And I mean no disrespect to you, Cynthia. Since he's got, the closer tie there in the authority chain, I think I'll do that. I think we need to know more about what's happening here.
Okay.
So when we get down to that point, we can vote if I have somebody to second it at that time. So, are you done with Clean Ocean? Would you like to move forward to your next?
The next item is pure bacteria source characterization study update.
Okay.
So they've done the investigative sampling, and that was done last fall and identified potential. They found the HF-183, the human marker, in that catch basin. And so we've gone through and done a variety of different items to try and identify where that could have came from. We just think that it was probably because it was really high in HF-183, and we didn't find it again. So we think it just may have been an anomaly. So we are now going to start with the confirmatory sampling. And confirmatory sampling is where they're going to take samples at the outfalls and then test for HF-183, and they have to take at least 40 samples. So that'll happen over the next month. It's probably going to start confirmatory sampling at the end of next week. And that'll go for about a month. And we want to have this project wrapped up by June, have a final report and completed by June 30th.
Thank you. Did you ever send a letter out? You said you were going to have a letter out this past month to your members of that board.
The Stakeholder Advisory Committee, no, I have not done that yet. It's drafted. We're almost ready to get that out. It's probably not going to be till next week now, though, just with other workload going on. But at least we can give them an update of that when we're going to start confirmatory sampling too, and schedule a date for the next Stakeholder Advisory Committee meeting, which we were looking at in April. We'll probably have one in April.
I think it's really important that they get that as soon as possible to know that the committee is still on base. I mean, it's still working, but you're not working. You probably haven't met for, well, how long now? Almost a year.
Yeah,
right?
It's been a year. Mm-hmm.
So,
oh, go ahead.
I just think even all of your members should know that you're still alive, but due to various circumstances, you haven't been meeting. At least the communication will help them leave a space for you. You don't want to lose that great group by attrition, right? Doreen, did you want to pipe in?
Yeah, I was just going to ask Cynthia, so that if a letter goes out and we're going to be doing this confirmatory sampling, and if it shows that, you know, there's nothing there, what's sort of going to become of the stakeholder advisory group? I mean, is it just going to be, I guess, disbanded at that point, or what would be the proposal?
Yeah, once the study is complete and everything is final, then the stakeholder advisory committee would be disbanded because it was formed specifically for the study.
Well, you would want to close though with recommendations that they make. You've got wonderful expert people on that committee, correct? You would want to have that closed. You wouldn't want to send away just because the study's done. They want to make you want recommendations to go to city council, right?
Recommendations for what?
Well, for what to do based on what the study reveals. What recommendations?
Yeah, I mean, if the study reveals that there's no HF 183 and that we're actually meeting water quality objectives, then.
Well, yeah, you're just projecting. We're just projecting right now. I'm just saying that end of those meetings that they have, I would hope that you will be asking them to make recommendations to the city council as to what those results mean to the city. What are the options to the city? In other words, take advantage of their expertise. Will you have them as a committee?
Yes, at the April meeting, we would be presenting some data from the confirmatory sampling. We'd probably be in the middle of the confirmatory sampling, so we can get feedback from them regarding that data and what we're seeing out there at that point in time.
Yeah, well, even when the study is over, I'm saying. Anyway.
But once the study is over, if we're meeting water quality objectives and we don't see any human sources coming out, then, coming out of the watershed, then the study is complete.
Well, but then the committee would make that recommendation, correct?
What recommendation?
That the committee is no longer needed. If you've solved the problem, or if whatever's been done and the bacteria is no longer there, the committee would make recommendations to the city council.
A recommendation to disband? I'm just unclear. I'm sorry, Susan.
Okay.
I mean, we're not going to continue the stakeholder advisory committee. It costs about $10,000 per meeting to have a stakeholder advisory committee. So it's very expensive. So it's not something we would continue to have if there's not a peer study anymore.
Well, if they're not needed anymore, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Well, I think we're on the same page. We're just not communicating, but we're on the same page. That's okay. Doreen, you're a member of that committee. At the end, you would probably like to have an opportunity to make recommendations about where to go next, correct?
Well, I think the whole idea behind the committee was that we were supposed to provide feedback to the city. So I think if the city presents findings that, show that there was no issue, and then, I think the advisory committee would conclude,
right,
support that recommendation or support the findings, and then, it would just disband it. But I just sort of find it, just after going through all this, it sort of makes me wonder why we formed this committee. And maybe it would have been better to be formed after the confirmatory sampling, because if it turns out that there wasn't really a problem at all, it seems like a lot of effort that we went through to assemble all these people together and get the group together. And we really haven't met much, or, we've only, so that's just an observation.
Well, there was a problem. We had the bacteria exceedances at the pier, right? So
Well,
with the study. And so, and then it's been since January of last year that the stakeholder advisory met and gave the recommendations on the number of samples to take for investigative and confirmatory sampling, and if we wanted to have the pier netting installed. But then, of course, we started the investigative sampling, COVID hit, the activities down at the pier totally changed. There wasn't people around. We didn't want to do sampling when really the environment around the pier was completely different than when there would be a whole lot of people there. So we were waiting for that, and then we get to the winter season, the rainy season. So now we're just starting it back up again because we have to try and get it during dry weather. So dry weather bacteria data.
And I think, Joreen, I hear your concerns. I think there is validity in transparency in the fact that there was members of the public and other stakeholders, regulatory folks who were involved in the preparation of the study and the execution of the study. I think it provides transparency that if they find nothing, that at least the study was done properly and the city's not trying to like sweep something under the rug. So I think there is value, but I certainly understand what you're saying about just the efficiency of it.
yeah.
Yes, I agree with that. And I think too, a committee of that caliber would be good to be, even if this committee, even if the purpose disbands, the committee themselves should be thought of to perhaps go to again, should we have another problem that is of this level. For example, maybe even the Pochi site. And I mentioned that to you and Dave before. I think that this was a good group that worked together and was very collaborative in their discussions. So that's my 2 cents worth from attending all those meetings, except the first one, which I didn't know about, but that's okay. Anyway, so I think that they were an asset to this discovery or our discussion about what to do next.
Definitely been an asset. I mean, those stakeholder advisory committees, there's been very good discussion, very technical people on there providing feedback. So I agree. And it's a pretty common practice to have a technical advisory committee of some type on these special studies.
Yes.
So it was important to have their feedback. And again, like Joe had mentioned, we wanted to have the transparency there too, so that the public knew that we weren't trying to sweep anything under the rug, and we're trying to present all the data as we got it. And we did find, some human sources through the DNA, but we haven't been able to identify anything persistent in the watershed that's contributing to that human source, and that's what the confirmatory sampling is going to see. If we find that HF183, a human source, again in that water quality data, then we might have to go back and figure out where that's coming from to try and abate that. So,
yes. Okay. Any other comments on that topic? All righty. Cynthia, will you take us to the next agenda item, please, since I don't have my last page?
Yep, the next agenda item is items from staff. It's potential future agenda items.
Oh, great.
So on there for April, I just thought the annual work plan implementation update. I had bottle refill station and then the drive-in movie night. But I also think the committee might want to consider starting to look at the annual work plan for the next year too, or maybe just going through the current work plan and see what's been accomplished, maybe an overview of that. And then again, the Clean Ocean Fee Renewal update. And then I just have on there future meetings, Ocean Protection Council strategic plan. That may have been a Joreen recommendation. So,
Well, yeah, Doreen and I have both recommended that, and I think I told you before they weren't sending speakers out because of COVID, and the best way really to learn from them is see if we could. I'll call them again and see if they want to do something similar that OCTA just did and talk about their recommendations since they just had this meeting. And would everybody agree to that? Would you like me to contact the OPC and ask them to give us a briefing on their latest actions, including the one that I just divulged to you about the plastics? Joe, are you in favor?
Yes, that sounds
Doreen?
good to me.
Okay, thank you, Joe. Doreen?
Yeah, that sounds good.
Chris?
Yes, that sounds good.
Charlie?
Sure.
Okay, great. Cynthia, would you add that to the agenda, please? That one you just read, the Ocean Pacific? On protection, rather?
Add it to
The April agenda?
what
It
you
might,
have.
it might go on A, but I'll start calling now to see if they can come and do a virtual with us on their key principles, their key goals for this year.
Yeah, if you get the speaker,
Yeah, that's what I'm
yeah,
saying.
we can add it to the agenda. Until you get the speaker, I'll add it to the agenda.
Okay, right now I just have a vote 5-0 for me to start to get the speaker, so I'm looking for April or May. So
Okay.
I just would like you to put it down for April or May, and I'll let you know as soon as I know, like this last time.
Okay.
Okay, great, thank you. And then did you have another one that you wanted to suggest, Cynthia?
No.
Okay, I wanted to suggest one that you did to the city council, and it was regarding the approval of the professional services agreement with Action Research for the business and residential recycling and organics diversion program implementation. I think it would be a good idea for our committee to learn more about that, even though you've shared a couple times the projects that you were working on, especially when it was a pilot project, the organics with the apartment complex, correct? Or is that not valid?
I'm sorry, my Wi-Fi cut out a little bit, but yeah, I shared information about the apartment complex pilot project. Yes.
Right. Well, I think that since the city approved this consultant coming in, maybe you could come in and maybe you could discuss with us and give us some insight, or have somebody come in and show us what they're going to do. Either way, or just give us a briefing. We could have it as an agenda item, if not, and just an agenda item, period, under your report, rather than a straight agenda item, you know what I mean, with a speaker.
Right.
However you'd like to deliver that, I think that our coastal advisory committee members should know all about this.
Yeah, we can, we still don't have the agreement in place yet. I don't know that I'll have much information before April 8th, but we could put it on the agenda for sure. I think definitely the Coastal Advisory Committee would be interested in this.
Well, yes,
project.
especially since we're going for 75% and we're only at 48. And this is affecting many, many businesses. So I think everybody on this committee should know about what our businesses are going to be facing. All right, I'm going to go down my line again. So I think you just want to do that as an agenda item with you, or do you want to get a speaker to come in?
I'll have to see. I don't know about April 8th. I don't think
No, I understand that.
Right. But come May or June meeting, maybe I could have a speaker that she would go over what their approach is to the project overall. But I'll check it out. I'll ask her. She's not have to do that. It's not in the budget, so I might just have to do it myself. So
Well, either way.
Okay.
But it'd be interesting to know exactly what that person would be doing,
Okay.
and how she would be doing it. So maybe she can even do as I said, a virtual.
Right, but I didn't put in the budget to have her present to advisory committees.
Okay.
So I don't have that in their budget.
Okay.
And so, but I can share the information on what their approach is.
Yes, I think
It's a team of people too. It's not just one person, so.
All right, great. Okay. Any other agenda items for April from CAC members? No? Okay. Cynthia, would you read the list right now again, please?
So for April, annual work plan implementation update, the bottle refill station and the drive-in movie night, Clean Ocean fee renewal update, and then future meetings, Ocean Protection Council strategic plan. That could be April or May, depending on the speaker. And then business and residential organics outreach program.
Okay. I don't really, I only want to have an update on our plan for April. And if we're going to work on it, I wouldn't want to do that until May, because I think April's looking pretty full.
Okay.
Any comments from my colleagues on that?
We don't have to jam it in. Let's not jam it in.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you, Charlie. All righty. Since nobody else is commenting, then we will just move on. Are we at a point of adjournment?
Well, number 11 is items from committee members. If any committee members have anything to share.
Let's
Nothing
go
from
down.
me.
Nothing from Charlie. Joe, do you have something to share?
Just I saw that the city's going to start ticketing again for the street sweeping. So FYI for everybody. I think it's this week or next week that it's starting.
Yes, I saw that too. Thank you for bringing it to our attention officially, though. Something to think about. Where are we? We should discuss that. Well, maybe we should wait till May, but we should bring that street sweeping back. Remember, we all voted to take that to the city council. Remember? Way back when, about a year ago, with Kenny.
Mm-hmm.
Let's bring that back. Let's bring that back on our May agenda, please.
The pandemic has had such, I don't know that this is the point in time that we start going out to expand that street sweeping program. We're trying to get a clean ocean fee passed. We have solid waste recycling agreement amendment. We've got the pandemic. So.
Well, I could wait till May. Anybody else have a thought on that?
Yeah, I was just bringing up the item just as an item from the committee member. So I didn't necessarily think we would take action on it.
Well, it's not really action.
This one, I'm sorry, Susan, to interrupt. This one predates me. What are we talking about?
We had voted to take to city council, taking a look at street sweeping to have more parity in the laws and with ticketing for street sweeping. All areas of San Clemente are not treated the same.
Yeah, so there's some streets in the Pier Bowl, and then we had a good map that was sent. Some streets are signed that they have ticketing. Other streets are signed that they're street sweeping, but they don't ticket. There's no ticket notice. So yeah,
and that's been a problem for a long time in town. And so one of our community members and a former Coastal Advisory Committee member, Ken Nielsen, brought it to our attention, and we voted unanimously to take this notion to the city council for review, so we could study what was happening and what should we do.
The concern seemed to be that it was like multi-use residential, like Pier Bowl had the ticketing standards, as did North Beach, but Southwest, where it was lower density, does not. So that was kind of the concern.
Good point. Thank you for that, Joe. Yes. So that's what we're looking at, Charlie.
Okay.
It was an action that we took, and it never went anywhere. Cynthia's got a good point of, do we want to deal with this now or in May, or do we want to delay it any longer because of COVID? I don't know. What is the committee's pleasure?
Look, if it's just a matter of is it we're going to speak to city council publicly, or is it really more of I'm just trying to figure out exactly what we're trying to do.
Cynthia, would you
as far as
bring
communication is concerned?
Yes, that's a good question, and that leads me back to you, Cynthia. Would you send that out to all of us, that recommendation, to refresh us? And then we can just discuss it as an agenda item next in April. Doesn't mean we have to act on it, but let's just do a information and discussion item, so everybody's on the same page.
I think there was a really good memo, Cynthia, that had like a map I don't know if you guys
Yeah.
had a memo or not, but I remember looking at a map that clearly specified where they ticket and where they don't.
Yes.
That would be good information to share.
Yeah, 'cause I think it was, I mean, it was raised to us as an equity issue, right?
Yes.
That people felt that it wasn't fair that some areas got ticketed and some didn't.
Right. And we also talked about the money that it would bring in if we did parity ticketing to, coastal, to the coastal fund, Clean
Yeah,
Ocean Fund.
And I would also support, I'd want to see what our recommendation is, because it's been so long. I don't
Yeah.
actually remember exactly what we said.
Yes. Thank you. So
I kind of wonder if we could just write a letter to Mayor Ward and just update her and let her take it and handle it, just as an idea.
I think that's a good idea too, but let's consider that next month after we both see the memo, the action that we took and the recommendation we made. Would you be agreeable to that, Charlie? I like your idea, but
Yeah, that's totally fine. I was just throwing ideas out.
well, we all like ideas being thrown out. So I think we're all in agreement to have that on the agenda next month, Cynthia, if you would then get those papers ready. Thank you very much for that. Joe, I'm glad you brought that up. So things to share, Joreen?
Nothing for me, thank you.
Okay. Chris?
Nothing from me, thank you.
Okay. And I had some things. Oh, did anybody see in the paper the picture of the whale with the baby whale? That was down in Dana Point Harbor about, I guess, 30 days ago or so. So I thought I'd point that out. And last weekend was the Dana Point's big whale celebration. Did anybody go, or did you happen to take part in that? I don't see any hands or yeses or anything. Okay, I did not either. But I did go this past week down, and I'm going to go tomorrow after these rains, down to Capistrano Beach and Beach Road. And having lived on Beach Road for a couple of years, I was absolutely flabbergasted at how it's changed. And it is filled with big piles of revetment rocks. And you saw those in the diagram that Jason shared with us this evening. Those little black circles and then the purple ones and the red ones. These are definitely huge boulders in piles in different locations. And just even, we only got 4 houses in walking on the beach because we got there at a little after high tide, about mid tide. And it was still high tide at the 2-hour period of the high tide. So when it's supposed to be easing down, and literally we got only 4 houses. And then that one house had a huge jut coming out. The house had been removed, so the parcel was only there. And right under the tip is a massive piling with just a stick or a pipe sticking out of the top that appeared to have been holding whatever was on that piece of property. It was literally jarring. And I suggest to all of you, if you go down, and you can see the big plastic cylinders full of sand. They have some on the north side and some on the south side. It's just and huge culverts almost of where the erosion has happened. Like the waves have gone in and just smoothly dug out big pits in the sand. It's really surreal to see it. So anyway, we're going to go down. I went down with somebody from the Planning Commission. We're going to do that again Saturday morning to see the effects of after the rain. And we're also going to go down by North Beach to see what's happening on that end and go south. I also want to go down to Dana Point and Doheny to see what kind of effect that's happening. And I'd like to follow up with Doheny and find out what's happening with that whole area down there. I'll talk to state parks. Maybe we can discuss that in May or June or something, and update on those things. But that's all I have on this end. I want to thank all of you for your great questions with our speakers. I can always count on you to bring in the just precise questions and inquiries to people. I think, and they always tell me they're always surprised at what great questions we ask. And I always say I'm never surprised. So thank you so much for your involvement and your volunteer work and your questions and being here and doing such a great job on the Coastal Advisory Committee. And thank you, Cynthia, for helping me tonight. I appreciate that very much.
Welcome.
So that be it. I need somebody to adjourn the meeting, and you'll have to read it from the agenda, please.
Sure. I'll be happy to make a motion to adjourn to the next regular Coastal Advisory Committee scheduled Thursday, April 8th, 2021 at 6:30 p.m. via teleconference.
Thank you,
Second.
Joe. May I have a second?
Second.
Was that you, Charlie?
Yes, ma'am.
Charlie seconded. All in favor? Aye.
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 Did we get everyone? Okay. Good night, everybody. Have a great weekend and stay safe. I'll see you in April. April 8th it is.
Thank you.
very much. Good night.
Thanks, guys. Thanks. Bye.
Great meeting. Thank you, Cynthia.
You're welcome.
Good night.